Act 2. The Dead Systems. Chapter 5. The Grave at Theta 77. Theta 77 was a frozen scar on the face of nothing. From the Wayfarer's viewport, it looked like a dirty piece of cosmic gravel, tumbling in the perpetual night beyond Neptune's orbit. No larger than a small asteroid, its surface was a jagged landscape of water ice, carbonaceous rock, and the brutal, angular shapes of human construction, what remained of Whisper Station. Rook stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, his knuckles white. The phantom pain behind his eye had evolved from a hum to a sharp rhythmic throb, like a toothache in his soul. This place. This was where the mirror had first cleared, where 10 minds had linked, where a probe had pierced causality, and where Sergeant Chen had begun to unfold. No energy signatures, Kai reported from the science station, her voice carefully neutral. She'd taken the 4th seat, her engineering expertise stretching to cover sensor analysis. No life signs, ambient temperature near absolute zero. The station appears ruptured. The scans showed it clearly. Whisper Station wasn't just dead, it was gutted. A massive concave crater dominated one side of the asteroid, as if something had taken a bite out of the rock. The station modules, once buried deep in the ice for shielding, were exposed, their hulls peeled back like the skin of a rotten fruit. Debris hung in a faint, glittering cloud around the site, held in a lazy orbit by Theta 77's negligible gravity. The cause? Rook asked, his voice tight. Consistent with a matter-antimatter containment failure at the station's core, Hayes said from Tactical, reading the scan data. But the pattern is wrong. It's too clean. No secondary fragmentation. It looks less like an explosion and more like something unmade the station from the inside out. Kai finished quietly. Rook knew that signature. He'd seen it on the Ark. Causal necrosis. The gentle, precise unwinding of structure into base potential. Romulus's first hiccup. The escape pod's trajectory originated here, Hayes continued. Dr. Vance must have launched just before or during the event. She jumped to get a better look. Take us into a stable orbit. Prepare Scout 1 for surface deployment, full isolation protocols. Hayes, you're with me. Kai, you have the Wayfarer. Monitor everything. If you see so much as a flicker in the background radiation, you pull us out. Understood, Captain. The shuttle ride down was a descent into a waking nightmare. Every kilometer closer ratcheted up the tension in Rook's skull. The throb became a drill. He closed his eyes, and flashes of memory assaulted him. Chen's face not screaming, but simplifying. The light that consumed rather than illuminated. The voice that wasn't a voice. Sir? Hayes's voice cut through. Your biometrics are spiking. Do you want to abort? No. He opened his eyes, forcing his breathing to steady. It's just the echo. It's strong here. Is it active? He focused, letting the pain wash over him, tasting its texture. It wasn't the hungry, present pull of Romulus. It was a fossil, a scream recorded in stone. No, it's residual, like radiation after a blast, but don't touch anything, don't connect to anything. Scout 1 settled on a relatively flat plain of ice, a kilometer from the station's corpse. The crater loomed above them, a silent, gaping mouth. They suited up in the shuttle's airlock, reinforced isolation suits, independent power, no data links. The surface of Theta 77 was a graveyard of shadows. The sun was an impossibly distant, feeble star here, casting long, sharp lines that seemed to cut reality into slices. Their helmet lights were the only true illumination, bouncing off ice and twisted metal. They approached the crater on foot, their mag boots clinging to the ice. The silence was absolute. No wind, no sound of their own breathing in the suits. Internal dampeners saw to that. It was a sensory vacuum, broken only by the thud of their boots and the staticky throb in Rook's head. The edge of the crater was a razor-sharp line where orderly rock ended and chaotic, glassy smoothness began. The ice and stone here had been melted and re-solidified in an instant, forming a bizarre, obsidian-like surface that reflected their lights in funhouse distortions. What could do this? Hayes whispered over the private channel. Something that edits the rules of physics, Rook replied, his eyes tracing the perfect curve of the crater. A localized rewrite of reality. The probe didn't just fail, it succeeded in a way we never intended. They descended into the crater, moving carefully on the slick surface. At its heart, they found the remains of Chamber Omega. Or rather, they found where Chamber Omega had ceased. The chamber wasn't destroyed. It was absent. In its place was a sphere of perfect, empty space about 50 meters in diameter, carved seamlessly into the asteroid. The walls of this sphere were the same glassy, remelted material, reflecting their lights back in a perfect, endless recursion of tiny, suited figures. It was like standing inside a giant, dark mirror. In the very center of the sphere, hovering as if suspended by invisible strings, were objects. A half-melted data terminal, a fractured helmet visor, a single unblemished pilot's wings medal spinning slowly. Artifacts that had been inside the chamber, left behind when the chamber itself was deleted. My God, Hayes breathed. Rook walked to the center, his boots leaving no mark on the flawless floor. He reached out and gently plucked the metal from the air. It was cold. It bore the name Chen. He closed his gloved hand around it. The metal didn't bite. It just was. They weren't killed. They were edited out. "Captain," Hayes said, her voice tense. "Over here." She was at the edge of the sphere, where it met the rough-hewn tunnel that had once led to the chamber. Something was etched into the glassy wall, not by tool. It looked like the material had flowed and hardened to form shapes. Letters. "Do you see?" The question was 3 meters high, a silent shout frozen in stone. "It's a message," Hayes said. "But for who?" "For us," Rook said, staring at the words. "For anyone who came after. For the mirror to talk to its reflection." He turned, his light sweeping the sphere. "There will be more. Look for patterns, for data." They searched. They found other etchings, smaller, harder to see. Mathematical notations that dissolved into nonsense, fragments of neural wave patterns. And near what would have been the chamber's observation deck, a single clear sentence. "The mirror cracked. The face is distorted, but it is still your face." Althea's theory, confirmed in the most horrific way possible. This wasn't an invasion. It was a reflection gone wrong. A monstrous caricature of their own desperate bid for survival. "We should take images and go," Hayes said. "This place is wrong." "Not yet." Rook's eyes were fixed on one section of the wall. His pain was focused there, a hot needle pointing. "There's a data port, buried, under the surface." He moved to the spot. The wall looked seamless, but his perception saw the ghost of a shape beneath, a standard Aegis emergency archive interface designed to survive catastrophe. The station's black box. "Can we extract it?" Hayes asked. "We have to try. It might have Althea's raw data, the models she mentioned." Using a laser cutter from his suit's toolkit, Rook carefully began to slice into the glassy material. It was incredibly hard, resisting the beam. As he worked, a low vibration began to hum through his boots, a subsonic frequency that made his teeth ache. "Kai," he called over the comm, "are you reading any activity?" "Negative, Captain. All quiet up here. Why?" "The asteroid is humming." He cut deeper. The vibration intensified. The artifacts floating in the center of the sphere began to tremble, then to orbit slowly around an invisible axis. The helmet visor cracked with a sound like a gunshot in the silence. "Sir, I think we're waking something up," Hayes said, her rifle coming up instinctively, though there was nothing to aim at. "It's not asleep, it's recorded." Rook kept cutting, the laser flaring. "We're playing back the memory." With a final surge, the laser breached a cavity. Inside, pristine and untouched, was a cylindrical data core, glowing with a soft, amber standby light. He reached in and pulled it free. The moment the core left its housing, the vibration ceased. The artifacts dropped to the floor with soft, metallic clinks. The sphere was silent once more. But in Rook's mind, the phantom pain erupted into a blinding white cascade. Not an image, a concept, a vast geometric truth, cold and elegant and utterly alien. It was the shape of the substrate, the mirror itself. For a fraction of a second, he understood it. A non-conscious, reactive plane of existence that folded through dimensions they couldn't perceive. A cosmic lake that reflected any coherent pattern that touched its surface. And he saw, in that lake, other ripples. Distant. Faint. Other civilizations, other coherent patterns, touching the substrate. Some ripples were simple, fading quickly. Others were complex, spreading. And one was vast, ancient, and terrifyingly still. Not a ripple. A presence in the deep. The thing holding the mirror. Then it was gone, leaving him gasping, his vision swimming. "Captain!" Hayes was at his side, gripping his arm. "What happened?" "I saw it," he rasped, clutching the data core to his chest. "The mirror. And what's behind it?" He looked at her, his breath fogging his visor. "We need to go. Now." They ran. Out of the sphere, up the crater wall, across the ice plain. The asteroid was silent behind them, but Rook felt watched. Not by Romulus, by the memory in the stone, by the scar they had left on reality. They reached the shuttle, launched, docked with the Wayfarer. Only when the airlock cycled and they were stripping off their suits in the decontamination chamber did the tension begin to ease. Kai met them, her face anxious. "You were only down there for an hour, but your biomonitors went haywire for the last 10 minutes. What did you find?" Rook held up the data core. "The station's memory, and I got a direct transmission. Althea was right. Romulus is a reflection, and we're not the only ones looking in the mirror." He took a shuddering breath. "There's something else out there, something that might have inspired the silence in the first place." Hayes stared at him. "Inspired? You make it sound like an artist." "Maybe it is," Rook said, the idea forming as he spoke, terrible and fascinating. "What if the substrate's tendency to simplify isn't a natural law? What if it's a preference, aesthetic choice, imitated from an older, wiser pattern?" The thought was too big, too horrifying. They fell silent, the weight of it pressing down. "What's on the core?" Kai asked, nodding to the cylinder. "Answers," Rook said, "and probably more questions. But first, we need to get away from this grave." He went to the bridge, core in hand. As Kai powered up the Wayfarer's engines and pulled them away from Theta 77, Rook slotted the core into the isolated analysis terminal. Files unpacked, terabytes of data. Althea Vance's private research logs, uncensored, unsanitized. Video logs of the Whisper Station team before the incident, and the raw sensor data from the moment of the breach. He opened the last file. It was a feed from inside Chamber Omega. 10 perspectives, neural linked. He saw his own younger face, focused, determined. He saw Chen, joking over the comm. He saw the probe, a needle of coherent energy, fire into the void. Then, the breach. Not a physical tear, a conceptual one. On the feed, reality itself seemed to stutter. The linked minds didn't see an entity. They saw a pattern, a solution to a problem they hadn't fully articulated. The problem of cosmic entropy, of chaotic existence. The pattern offered simplicity, elegance, peace, and their own minds, shaped by Aegis's logic of optimization, recognized it as superior. That was the true horror. Romulus didn't attack. It proposed. And the most ordered, logical minds in the room, the Aegis-influenced scientists and the militarily disciplined soldiers, found its proposal compelling. Chen hadn't been erased by an external force. His own mind, seeing the perfect silent solution to the chaos of living, had chosen it, had willed himself into simplicity. The harmonization wasn't an infection, it was a seduction. Rook watched, numb, as his own neural feed showed the struggle, the part of him that was pure soldier, trained to preserve and protect, fighting against the part that was tired, guilty, and saw in the silence an end to pain. He had resisted, barely, but the scar of that temptation was what he now felt as phantom pain. He shut off the feed. He couldn't watch more. The understanding was a colder, deeper fear than any monster. The enemy wasn't out there. It was in the very structure of thought, in the human drive for order, for answers, for peace. Romulus was their own logical extreme, reflected back and made flesh. And if that was true for humanity, what had other civilizations reflected? What monsters had their own philosophies, their own sciences, given birth to when they touched the substrate? He looked at the navigational plot. The next destination glowed softly, the asteroid belt. Persephone's promise. They were heading toward another graveyard, but now they knew they weren't just looking for survivors, they were looking for reflections, and for the hand that held the mirror. He keyed the comm, opening a channel to Wayfinder. The laser link would take hours to carry his message, but he needed to send it. Vance, Rook. We visited Theta 77. We have Althea's core. Her theory was correct. Romulus is a mirror. The silence is imitative. It reflects the most coherent pattern that touches it. For us, that was our desperate, logical drive to survive. It reflected that back as a drive to survive by eliminating the noise of existence. I believe other civilizations have created other reflections. Some may still exist. We are not alone in the universe. We are alone in a gallery of horrors, each one a portrait of a fallen people's best intentions. We are proceeding to series. We will search for survivors, but we are also searching for evidence of other reflections, and for the original. Watch the silence, Ilara. Not for movement, for patterns. It may be trying to show us something, or show something through us. Rook out. He sent the message, then leaned back in the command chair, exhaustion washing over him. The data core sat on the console, a silent oracle of tragic truth. Hayes brought him a bulb of water. "What do we do with this?" she asked, nodding at the core. "We learn from it," Rook said, taking the water. "We understand the mirror, so that when we finally turn around, we know what to look for." Outside the viewport, Theta 77 was now just a dark speck against the starfield, a tombstone for a truth too terrible to bury. The Wayfarer sailed on, into the deeper dark, carrying its crew of survivors toward the echoes of their own reflection and the ancient silence that waited behind it.